Can I invite Mr. Anand Deshpande on the stage, please? I want to do it myself, Sorry. Please, have a seat. Mr. Ganesh, please. Sir, people want to hear more of you. So, morning was not enough, so they want more of you.
Dr. Ganesh Natarajan.
Please. हाँ, सर दोनों आप इधर ही बैठिए, मैं यहाँ बैठूंगा सर, आप दोनों यहाँ बैठिए आराम से. So basically the whole idea is I think from morning we had great sessions. I am sure you guys learned a lot from morning, and the whole idea is what we have come up with a common problem what all of us are facing, and one way is of course we keep on discussing about the problem, or we can rethink the whole solution what we can do. So I had a word with Mr. Anand Deshpande, and he had really some great insight in terms of how we can maybe change the approach, because if we cannot change the industry, we can change the approach, right? So, Mr. Anand, please, do you want to start on this?
Okay, so first, I'm not an HR person. Okay, second, I'm a Ganesh Bhakt, so I'm here because of Ganesh. So you should thank Ganesh for inviting me here. And I'm really waiting for Amisha Patel.
That's a pun, by the way.
So she covered half the ad in the news, in your thing. So clearly she's the most important person. We are all waiting for her. And the rest of us here, we are going to fill in till she gets here. So that's the other part of it. Okay, having said that, okay, I'm a techie by training. So I'm a computer science geek. And I sort of look at things in terms of trade-offs and first principles, okay? And I'm not an HR guy, so I'm going to give you what I have observed in general in terms of what's happening and what's going on. Second thing I want to mention, and for today's conversation as well, that, I was running Persistent, but now I'm just the chairman. I'm part of the ownership of the company. I have a management team that runs the business. So I'm not going to talk about what Persistent is doing. Let the management decide what that is. But I can give you my opinions on what should be done, which is a nice way to do this. So I'm going to give you 4 points, which I think, again, going from first principles that I want to set up. And that will help in addressing some of these other questions that you have. So the first thing I want, this is something we did at Persistent for the last several years. First thing that is very important to understand is that every employee, every person is responsible for his own career. You are not responsible for his career as HR. Company is not responsible for the career. Every individual is responsible for his own career. Very important to note, because everyone else sort of tries to believe that, oh, I'm going to make your career, I'm going to give you a career path, I'm going to train you. Well, sorry, I'm responsible for my career, and every employee is responsible for their own careers. So this is the first thing you have to understand. And it is important to think like that, because there is no way anything else is possible. So first thing, that's very important. The second part that I want you to understand is that work is not isolated at all. Work and life actually have to live in harmony. Work is going to come at home, so home has to come to work. Okay? And this is the reality of life. You cannot separate work from life. Life and work have to go together. And as people running businesses or whatever else you may be running, you have to appreciate the fact that every employee or every person who works in the team is part of a life that he is running, and work is one part of his life, okay, or her life, whatever. So it's very important to consider that, because a lot of times people miss out on this very important thing, especially the HR guys who are very used to learning things from the book, and then they miss this point out. Okay. Third point I want to make is that companies go through different stages of life. Okay. At different stage of the life of the company, you need different kinds of people. And to give you a sense, what I have observed is that companies go through these S curves. You do a certain things, you'll see growth, and then the company plateaus out, and you have to find the next S curve, and the next one, and the next one. At every S curve, and this transition is not very easy for people to make, and this is where companies falter. So this ability to move from one orbit to the next orbit to the next orbit is the critical function for the growth of the business and for the longevity of the business. And if you're not able to understand these transitions and look at what you need in the context of what you might be doing, then you are going to miss out on where you want to go. Likewise, individuals also go through these stages. And I have been working on this for a while, and I've been doing many workshops on what should individuals do, what should you do in your first 10 years of your career versus second 10 years of your career, third 10, fourth 10, and fifth 10, and so on. And the idea here is that at different stages in your life as an individual who is responsible for his own career has different expectations and aspirations. And companies tend to force people into saying that, I need you to do this and this promotion, whatever. That may not be important for that person at a certain stage of life. So you have to appreciate that there is an individual involved. The individual is responsible for their career, and they have phases in their life. At different parts of their life or different stages of their life, they're likely to think differently about different things, and one has to be sensitive to that fact. Okay, so that was just, these S-curves actually apply to individuals also, and we can talk more about that. And then I believe that everyone, since is responsible for their own career, we have to look at HR as supporting my aspirations rather than telling me what your aspirations are, So once you take this sort of approach that, I'm responsible for my career, and you HR, you are responsible for making me happen. And I'm going to flip this in another very interesting way. And there's a very nice book that a friend of mine has written. His name is Ashok Shah. And he has a book he calls Me Enterprise. All right, you can look it up. It's available online. And his context is that I am my own enterprise. So I'm responsible for my career. So I am responsible for my training. If I need to go trained in something new, it's not the company's responsibility, it's my responsibility, because that's what I need to do. I should invest in myself because I'm responsible for my career. If you want to go somewhere, it's my responsibility. I should invest. Don't come and tell me the company didn't take care of me or did this. It's not company's problem, it's my problem. I'm the one responsible for my career. Then you go further along and say, if I work for the company is my customer. So if I treat my customer with respect, I am my own enterprise, I should be treating the company like the company is my customer as well, right? So there is a lot of responsibility that we need to give and empower the individuals to be in a position to control their life and work their life out. And what we have found, especially now in the company itself as well, is that, yes, people come, people go, people leave, but the importance of empowering individuals to believe that they manage their life and their career is highly, highly good stuff. It helps everyone in all kinds of different ways. So once you take this sort of first principles approach, right, then you can answer many of these questions about, what am I supposed to do, who's supposed to do what, and all of these. They kind of fall in place. So let me stop here because we have other people as well. And I just thought I'd put the first 4 points that I've seen happen. And then, of course, Chitiz will have other ideas and we can take questions from everyone else.
No, just to add to that, first of all, I must acknowledge what Anand said, because when I moved to Pune in 2001, moved from Aptech to Zensar, there were only 3 companies of any relevance in the tech sector in Pune. One was, of course, I think Zensar was about 400 people. Anand must have been about 500 people. And there was another...
You're always smaller than Zensar.
Oh, you're smaller. Then you must be 350. And then there was another company which was around the same size called KPIT Cummins in those days. And that was also 300 people. So imagine the whole industry in Pune was about max 2,000 people. Today we are probably 4 lakhs and growing. So Pune has probably been the fastest growing tech city. Bangalore has always been very big. But I'm saying that's the kind of scale. And I think thanks to the fact that all of us ran very successful companies, all became hugely successful in the stock markets, I think everybody thought there must be some secret about Pune. And, whether it was TCS or Infosys or, of course, Honeywell was always there. But I think that's really what we've seen. So it's a very interesting place to be in. And I still remember the first time to Pune. And that time I was this typical Bombay guy, came wearing a suit and tie and everything else. And Anand gave me his first lesson. And every time I meet Anand, I get lessons from him. So he says, Pune mein bhaiya, when you do formal, you change your chappals for sandals and tuck in your shirt. Bas aur kuch nahi karna. Okay, which is interesting, because we sometimes transpose cultures of multinationals onto local. You try and transpose the culture of a startup onto a mid-tier company and vice versa. So we have to understand that we have to be culturally sensitive. However, I totally agree with his second point when he talked about, work and life are kind of intertwined. Somebody asked me recently that, look, what's your definition of work-life balance? So I said, for me, work-life balance is 5.5 days a week I work from office and 1.5 days I work from home. So is that balance? I don't know. Okay, and you're saying, oh my God, this guy's old-fashioned. Everybody wants to have their... I was talking to a friend of mine in New York literally 3 days back, and she's Harvard Business School, worked for McKinsey for a couple of years, now working for a startup. And I said, what are you most excited about? She said, I'm most excited about the fact that we're now designing this permanent 3-day week. So I said, 3 days from come to work and 2 days from home. He says, no, only work for 3 days. I'm like, wow, man. This is like France. So I'm saying there will be different strokes for different folks. And I think what Anand said is absolutely right. And the last point he made was what I talked about in the morning, that identify the jugnu within the person. Remember I talked about that? So I'm saying if there is a collective flame or a jwala that is there in the company, and each of our little flames, our jugnus can contribute towards that, then it's a perfect mix. Then you won't think of work-life balance, you won't think of should I quit and go tomorrow somewhere else. Because in any case, if you're working 7 days a week, you don't have time to surf the internet and float your biodata somewhere else. So from an HR point of view, think of it. Can you get people to really commit themselves to, and I'm glad that there are so many people in this room whom I have worked with in the past. I mean, just to read out, like Mukta and I designed the whole leadership agenda for Zensar, because she was in corporate office in RPG, and she and I used to interact very often. I know most of her poems, know most of her paintings. Mr. Bhave forgot to mention she's also a great poet and she's a published poet in terms of she has a list of poems published. So people like her have really helped in making this happen. And similarly, I mean, if you look at Manjari, for instance, who I know for the last 25 years, she first came to interview me as a journalist from DataQuest. And, we've been like hanging around forever. And today, if you look at Sanjana out there, for instance, who is 17 years in Zensar, she tells me, okay. And they probably first job. So there are people like this still in this planet, okay, who are very happy with what they do. Okay, don't necessarily keep looking at what is outside. And I dare say Persistent is one of those. I mean, just recently, I think a couple of weeks back, one of my best HR heads, a guy called Yogesh Patgaonkar, joined Anand's company as his CHRO. So I'm saying there are people who really believe in values like loyalty and working for people, working for great leaders. And I think that's really what we're all saying. That at the end of the day, if you think it's all about money stupid, you're being stupid. Because if you start as HR or CEO with that perspective, you're never going to get anywhere. Because there's no amount of money you can stuff down people's wallets or throats that will hold them. And we've discussed this over the last 6 hours. So I think that's something that we need to look at. Back to Chitiz.
So great points. First of all, you mentioned about Amisha Patel, right? So see that's why I'm a designer. They love Amisha Patel. No, because the reason is even in this image, if you see on the back side, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why I'm so big in this image. So maybe
you don't have to explain everything, boss. It's all right. Sometimes you need a joke. Go on.
Yes. So these are great points. So from morning, yeah.
Probably the audience on social media that Amisha Patel is going to teach a lot of people HR, and Ganesh and I will be there.
Right. So, sir, of course, all these things, what we're talking about is how we attract talent, how we enable them, how we retain them, right? So that's one approach of doing that. But then, the other day we were talking about the way the things are changing.
Correct.
Right.
So, okay, let me try to sort of tell you the most important. So what I've realized is that this whole thing about what is a company, right? That has become a very interesting question in itself, right? And I think a lot of these discussions that you are looking at are sort of, in a sense, an old-fashioned way of looking at what a company means. And I really believe that, and I can ask this question to all of you. So all of you work from home. Tell me how many of you
work from home?
Everybody was working from home. I think clearly that was 100% there. My question to you is, how many of you believe that at least 10% of your employees were moonlighting, meaning doing one more job at the same time? How many of you believe that at least 30% were moonlighting? Okay.
Many of them, even I believe.
I believe, you believe. So reality is that, people want to do many jobs at the same time in a certain situation. People want, within the same company also, they want to do 2 jobs at the same time. Okay? So there is all kinds of different things that are happening. Okay? This is one part of it. I'll tell you, I'm working on 2 interesting missions at the moment. And one, I'm trying to build a data set at India level for cancer data. So we call it India Cancer Genome Atlas. All right? We have a mission. I don't have any employees. Clearly, everyone who is part of it is a doctor somewhere and is a researcher and all of that. I have another project like this with RSSDI, which is the Research Society for Study of Diabetes in India. Again, I have very committed people and they all work together, but none of them are employees. You look at IPL, you look at the teams that are there. Do you know what team Chris Gale plays for? Well, now he's not playing, but people like him, they play on many teams at the same time. Do you mean they are not committed to their company or their team? Are they not playing with their full enthusiasm? All right. You look at situations like movies. When you make a movie, you bring a team together. The job gets done. The movie is done. You disassemble the team. New movie, new team. This is how people have been doing things. So I really believe that as we look ahead. I lost this.
This occasionally happens to that mic.
So as I look ahead, right, I believe that the definition of company, what does company mean? What does an employee mean? What does job mean? What is the project you are trying to do? All of these things are likely to evolve, all right? And here's where I sort of go back to the first principles. From the company's point of view, company has a journey, company has a stage, and a company has a mission, and they need to do that. Employees have a stage, they have certain points in their life, and they're going to do certain things that are appropriate for them. At certain stage in your life, kids are interested in moving from one place to the other. So that's the way it is. They want to get more money because that's what they think is sexy. As simple as that. So, you can't fight these kinds of mechanics. You have to figure out a way to play around these if you want to retain and hold people. And that's more interesting than trying to say, okay, how do I go against the tide? Most of us, and I'll give you some very crude examples. We are machhar, basically. These trends are too big for us to go on. So in this kind of context, the companies, individuals, we are all small fries here. We don't make the trends happen. These trends are happening all over the place. So how do you deal with it? I look at it, and I've said this in many different ways. We have to think like the makhi that moves on the bhains that is moving, okay? So jo bhains ja raha hai, uske saath nikal jana chahiye. Don't try to bloody fight it. Yeah, there's a big bhains and you are the small makhi. Where are you going to go, right? So this is how you have to think about it. So you have to figure out the trends that are there and go with them, rather than trying to say that, I'm going to make the bhains go in another direction because I want to go there. Arey, you are a makhi. Go with the bhains that is going in the direction you want to go, right? Why are you kind of going after that? So this is the reality of how you have to think a little bit about saying, how can I be creative? This is the trend that is going to happen. People are hiring from everywhere. People are going all over the place. So how can I make it more interesting? How can I find it a way so that I can get what I want to get done without trying to break the trends? So these are sort of things that I think this is an opportunity for people to think out of the box, think from first principles, think about the individual. The individual has a mission. There is a life that he's trying to live. And in that mission, he thinks that other people are telling him this or that. So this is the reality of stuff. So now if I were to stop here and project a little bit further along, say 5 years from now or 10 years from now, I believe that the gig economy is going to happen. People are going to have multiple jobs at the same time, all right? And companies will figure out a way to deal with this, okay? Hiring market will depend from anywhere in the world. You can work from anywhere. People will work from anywhere. You just saw the Airbnb stuff. That guy said, I have 70 locations where I have Airbnbs. You can go rent any Airbnb you want and you can work there. Once in 6 months, we will meet and we have a schedule. All of us, very honestly, we found that our productivity at work, meaning we delivered our best numbers when everybody was home, okay? Clearly something was working right and people were doing their job. So I find that this whole HR guys are very interested in getting people to come to work more than employees wanting to come to work. So, a little bit, go with the flow a bit, figure this out, see what is appropriate, create incentives, think about the guy's life and work with their things, and you will find answers to solutions that are appropriate for the context of the company, the context of the individual and everything else. And don't straitjacket everyone in the same box because you don't need to anymore. That's my opinion.
Right. No, greatly said. I was just giving an example. Yeah, of course. Sure. Please. So I was giving the example in the morning session itself. We don't realize it, but it's already happening. Previously.
You run a full business on the basis of that.
I run a full business. I'll come to that. Right? But the whole idea is.
So your premise is based on this particular thing, right?
Yeah, of course, right. Because we got these ideas in the past, and we are already prepared, to go towards this gig economy. But I have a very different idea, which I will discuss in a while. But overall, what I've seen is people are already used to this gig-based economy. In IT, it might be not that big, it might not be that common. But for example, app like Urban Clap, you can get someone in 10 minutes rather than having someone full time. You have Driver Z, We don't need a full-time driver. You can just get a driver for 1 hour. You get like so many things which are happening. So same way, let's say a Persistent, just give an example, Persistent, closed a big project, right? Where they need 500 people. And you don't have that people. So one way is, of course, to go out and hire those people. But what if, as you rightly said,
you could always come to company bench and check them.
Company bench, yeah. But I'm saying it's more of a gig-based kind of thing where you get those people right away, just for that 3 months duration or just for 6 months duration. So you don't need to worry about all these other things.
Yeah. So now let's flip this thing. We've had this enough. Now I think the interesting question is, we have HR teams here, right? So how do you build culture? Is culture important, right? How do you build culture in a situation like this? Do teams, when people are floating, they come in, they do gig work. What does it mean by that? What does it mean to be a professional? Who are you loyal to? Are you loyal to your profession? What does it mean to be loyal to your profession? So is Chris Gale loyal to Punjab when he's playing with that team, or if they get moved because some auction they got somewhere else, what happens to loyalty? Do teams have their own culture? How do you build a culture in these kinds of situations, right? So these are facts that are going to happen, and I think interesting thing that we should discuss is, as HR heads or leaders or parts of the HR organization where you are responsible for ensuring that the company's mission is achieved, individual's mission is achieved. Well, first you should have a mission, company should have a mission, but let's assume that's there. It's already talked about in many ways. So under these conditions, how do you build a team that is aligned to the mission, and even the smallest company can feel like, I can make this happen in my context? And that would be an interesting conversation to have, which I would love to be part of. And I think we should open it out for questions rather than, Buddhas here, 60 pluses, telling all kinds of weird things.
No, just to add one point, I think one thing you must remember as HR is watch out for value violations. Because it's very easy to turn a blind eye. ठीक है, घर से काम कर रहा है, even if he's working somewhere else, how does it matter? So long as it doesn't, so outcomes are there. So these are easy kind of justifications you should be very careful about. Because gig working does not mean that you get full-time salary from 3 companies. Gig working means that you're distributing your time across companies. So these kind of nuances, I think.
But what is salary again will vary, right? Meaning when you go to the gig, you're not going to get paid salary for a month. You might get salary for the project. Right? So if this is the reality and people leave, why are you so offended if they leave? Right? Is it good for people to leave? So all of these are very interesting questions. And I think let's not get stuck by saying I must attract, I must retain, and I must hold on and empower and enable. You should enable the individuals to be able to think in a way so that they can be successful in their lives and careers. And if everyone is successful, everyone else, the companies will also do fine. And this is sort of kind of this the other way around as well. The companies do well, individuals also do well. So they go in harmony in some sense. And trying to create that excitement is the job of all of us in some sense.
Yeah, perfect. I think it's a great idea. Throw it open to questions here. Unless you have a question.
No, I don't have a question. Just
I'm sure you have.
Just
but pehle baki log ka question.
But just one last thing I want to mention, the problem what we are mentioning about all these things. So company like let's say Accenture or Persistent, HCL and all, they are struggling for resources, right? Like they want resources.
At this moment, yes.
Yes, right. But there are many companies out there which are like 50 people company, 30 people company, who have created a culture, who have created a fun environment, who have people, but they still don't have work. So what we realized is, boss, we should start doing the matchmaking, right? We have company like
we got it. Company bench can do all of that stuff. हम लोग sold हैं boss.
Right.
मत बेचो सबको. अभी सबकी सुनते हैं थोड़ा.
Right. Okay. So I think we have passed the message.
We got your model, boss. You are going to be hugely successful, and we are all here to bless your success. No question about it.
Great.
We all get it.
So let's open for the audience.
Actually, if you ask, we could repeat the question also.
Anybody whose voice is loud enough, don't wait for the mic.
Any questions? Any questions from audience?
So there's a lady out there.
Yes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Shruti. I am the Talent Acquisition Head of Zensoft Services. Hi, Ganesh. Hi, Anand. So I just wanted to understand, there's a new trend that is coming in. Previously, what we are facing is people are not joining last minute, right? That's like a thing that is happening for the entire recruitment team across India. So the new trend that is coming up is to attract back your previous employees from wherever they are, right? So what are your thoughts on that? And if you could give some specific examples of some successes that you've had before.
No, it's a great question. And honestly, Zensar, we had a formal policy on what do you call it, Sanjana? Boomerang recruitment, right? So boomerang recruitment was a big deal for us. Like one of our senior most presidents of the organization, a guy called Nitin Parab, I mean, he actually was a boomerang recruitment. And similarly, even Yogesh, for instance, okay, who I mentioned as his name, I mean, he left Zensar, he came back, and it was very easy for us. But one thing you must remember is, don't recruit a person who left in bad taste. For instance, somebody just flouted all your norms and went off, and tomorrow he wants to come back. So you must, as HR, must have a ability to know that who are the people who are candidates for boomerang recruitment. Like for instance, every year I remember in Zensar we used to have an alumni meet, which means that they would be invited to our annual cultural event. We'd call them over. We'd actually brief them like we briefed analysts and shareholders on what is happening in the company. The idea being that, look, whenever you want to come back, if you have left in good taste, feel free. It's your home. So I've had very good experiences with boomerang recruitment. And even you heard Amit this morning, who's GTT, and he mentioned that earlier. He came, he left and joined a multinational. 2 years he got bored and he wanted to come back, and we happily took him back. I remember Manjali was his boss at that time. Manjali recommended him to him, and Mridula, who was there in the morning, she hired him. So it was a completely collaborative, let's take this guy back. So I've had very good experience. I know, Anand, do you have any thoughts on it?
No, I think let's move on. I also agree with this.
Good evening, leaders. We've been having a very great discussion, but I would like to flip it a little. We've been thinking about retention, hiring, and all of it from the employee perspective. I want to talk it from the HR perspective. How do you think is the market for HRs right now, and specifically for the non-hiring or, the non-recruitment HR market?
Market for HR meaning when you want to
Yeah, she's saying that HR people के लिए market कैसा? अरे अच्छा है, बहुत अच्छा है.
Specifically for the non-hiring, non-recruitment, the HR
Okay,
BP or
let me sort of flip this question to you. Let me give you some guidance to all of you who are looking for jobs. Okay. Now, certainly persistent is hiring, but let me sort of explain a little bit on how you should look for jobs. Okay, especially for senior jobs, right? So I think what I have seen is that a lot of people come and say, I have done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. Great, you have done all this. Question is, what will you do for me? As an employer or somebody I'm trying to hire at senior levels, you should be able to tell me why I should hire you. So what are you going to do for me? So if you're an HR person and you say, oh, I've been an HR person in Zensar, I've been an HR person here, I've been an HR person here. Yeah, so what? What has that HR thing done for you, and why are you unique and different in terms of why you should be hired? Okay, so I want to sort of digress a little bit and sort of answer your question to give you some guidance in terms of what I tell people in terms of what they need to think about in how they should move, right? So, yeah, you do a career a lot of times, and this again goes back to the fundamental question, I'm responsible for my own career, right? Companies want you to follow a certain routine. Ye karo, uske baad yo karo, ye karo, wo karo, all that stuff. The reality is that what has it done for you is something that a lot of people are not able to answer. So when I ask somebody, oh, what's your show us your experience? Oh, I've done this, I've done that, 5 years here, 3 years there. Okay, so who are you now? Oh, I can do anything you tell me to do. Oh, I am very capable. I just do anything. I think, man, I don't want to hire anybody who does anything. You have to do something for me, right? And I'll give you another tip. When I hire somebody senior, in our business, right, there are basically 3 kinds of things that are relevant. Somebody who brings the business, somebody who is like a real expert in some area, tech, whatever, and third guy who keeps the trains running on time. These 3 areas. When I look for someone at a senior level, I want somebody to be an A in at least one of these 3 things. Not 3 Bs. Okay, I don't want 3 Bs. So if I get somebody, say, yes, pick one. Don't talk about 3 things. Pick one. You're a sales guy, there are quota, deliver, you are great. If you are a guy who is a techie, tell me at what level you can do it. Can I put you at the CTO at IBM? That's your level. Oh no, I cannot do that. Can I put you at this level? Okay, fine. Then everything fits because of that. If you're the guy who runs train, there are a lot of people who run trains. So you better be good at it. So don't tell me that I have run trains here, I've run trains there. What has that given you? Why are you different? And the flip question that you should ask yourselves is, what am I doing today that someone 5 years younger can't do? And if somebody 5 years younger can do your job, especially in HR, what happens is you're in a functional organization. So yeah, meaning another HR. So you have to be able to answer this question. So what is my HR capabilities now that someone 5 years younger can't do? And if somebody 5 years younger can do my job, well, I don't deserve that salary. Somebody I should replace with somebody younger anyway, right? So if in your career you are not able to identify how you are growing and getting better, and this again, I go back to this, you are responsible for your career. Don't tell me that I do HR at the company. That's fine. That's useful because that's how you learn. But it's you and your career. So if you are looking for a job in other HR departments, you should be able to go and articulate to the head of HR or to the CEO or whatever that by hiring me, I'm going to transform your business in this form or the other. Then you are in a position to demand what you want. Otherwise, I'm picking the best available under the context of my vacancies. And then you are not going to get to the right place. Sorry, a little bit long answer, but I think we are talking to the mid-management guys here, so I thought this would be useful.
You had a question? Yeah, go ahead.
I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
I'm Swati Verma from Honeywell. So my question was, generally we hear a good quote, which is their culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, this is all set of HRs over here. So what are your thoughts when we have to drive the culture is everyone's responsibility? It's just not HRs, but everyone owns it. How we could drive that with the senior leaders where strategy and culture has to be?
Yeah, so I'm going to repeat the question just for the benefit of everyone else because perhaps at the back you may not have been able to hear it. So that's Swati from Honeywell, and she says that it's well known or believed that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So how do you get the senior management, not the junior ones, she said, the senior management aligned to the culture because they seem to be all over the place, Ashish. So how do you get the senior management to align to the culture of the company? Good question. I think culture is very important, no doubt about it. But there are three parts to culture that I think are important for people to think about. One is it's the stories that build the culture. It's the rituals that reinforce that culture, right? So these are two very related but very important things. Where do you get the stories? How do you create the stories? And it's the actions that basically consolidate the culture. So at the end of it, if you want to tell people about culture, it's not about writing 5 points on a board and saying, oh yeah, we have these values. Nobody gives a shit about them. At the end of it, it is about the stories tells about what the culture is and what stories are the ones that create that culture. Is the rituals that reinforce that culture. And you have to create rituals. And then finally, it's the actions that basically make a really put the nail in the head. Because if you say all this stuff and you act stupidly, then it's what is the culture? And the culture to some extent depends on the worst thing that you can do in the organization. So if you tolerate some bad behavior, that's the end of your cultural statement. Oh, we believe in, meritocracy. And the guy who gets promoted at the junior most level is somebody. Gone, you're meritocracy. Don't say meritocracy in that case. Why do you want to say it? Saying things doesn't mean you have to act on it. So you have to have stories, you have to have rituals, and then you have to have action to demonstrate that. You want to act? No.
Go ahead.
Anand sir, Ganesh sir, thank you. My question is, the industry is undergoing transformation. When we see 2 years back, startup culture has came in, and all big organizations, they have changed their strategies in terms of business within business, and then they have started focusing towards small groups within the big organization. So when we see culture specific, again, we have a lot of setbacks we have seen in the culture, in the startup cultures. So which is better, startup or a big organization which are adopting a startup culture within small groups?
See, I think these things are not what is better versus this thing. Is gulab jamun better or rasmalai better? Well, it depends what you want to eat. Is coffee the right thing for me or is it whiskey? Depends on all these other things. So all of this stuff, these are not things to compare. So, for the startup, there's a startup culture. For the large company, there's a large company culture. If the company needs to do something different, they have to evolve. Everything is transforming. Businesses evolve. Even if nothing else happened, businesses go through a life, and along the life, different things happen. What you can do at 20 is not the same thing you do at 40, and it's very different from what you do at 60, and that's the reality.
Thank you.
See, and just to add to that, I mean, don't generalize it, because I mean, if you take let's say a TCS doing work for a GE and there are, let's say, 40,000 people, they're not adopting any startup culture. They're adopting a solid SEI, CMM level 5 process culture. Nothing has changed there. But what you're talking about is SWAT teams and squads, and we're doing agile. That's okay. I mean, like even in State Bank, where I also chair the digital and technology committee, we have 8,000 people working directly as well as 6,000 vendor employees. So there are, for different projects, we will use different cultures. It doesn't mean that there's one standard culture. So I don't think there's something, I completely agree with that. There's no such thing as a startup culture. If the startup culture is everybody comes in shorts and does great stuff, I mean, it's not going to be working in a large organization. Okay, in State Bank of India, the extreme opposite. The minute you become a chief general manager, you have to wear suits and ties all the time. So even I bought 2 new suits from Raymond's because I have to attend the State Bank board every week. But that's their culture. It doesn't mean that they think like old people or anything like that. It's just that's a dress system. Okay, so I'm saying it'll change for various people, but you have to figure out what works for your organization. And as HR, I think the HR and leaders must discuss, and whatever works is whatever works. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And another thing you must remember is, I mean, there are a lot of, like, the most recent controversy, which I've answered this question 400 times in the last 3 days, is this thing going on with the labor courts and I think Infosys, the non-compete clause, etc., etc. Now, as HR, I want you to know that non-compete is a valid clause. Okay? And non-compete does not mean, and that's what, I mean, our social media picks up, oh my God, Infosys has said you can't join Wipro after you leave Infosys. It's complete bullshit, okay? If you even went into the fine print, what they're saying is that if you're working for a client, you can't go work for the same client or do the same, or sell to the same client if you join somebody else. And they just mention any other large company. Now, this is perfectly legally valid. I hope when the labor discussion takes place, people will figure it out. I mean, I've had non-competes and you know what non-solicitation is, right? I mean, you can't take people from the same organization. I mean, if somebody leaves Honeywell, you can't go poach people from Honeywell for whatever period, let's say 1 year or whatever. That's perfectly fine. We've implemented it in the US, we've implemented it in Europe, in India. So I'm saying there are certain things that you must use your own intelligence to say what is valid, talk to lawyers, etc., etc. Because in this sudden hype that is being created, everything will be blown up. Everybody will say, oh my God, it's coming in the way of fundamental rights. I would like to leave tomorrow and take 5 clients with you. It is only permitted in advertising agencies, not in manufacturing, not in this thing. So I think a lot of learning also has to happen with HR. And if HR, to answer the previous question, feels that they can also, like the resource, float around from company to company every 6 months, you will not learn anything either. You need not go to the extreme of Sanjana staying 17 years in an HR role, or you may want to. But don't think that as HR now I've got this great opportunity, I can again double my salary and leave every 6 months. You're not going to learn anything that way. So I think everybody, and going back to Anand's original point, you have to form your view on me, the enterprise, what do I want to become? And once you do that, I think you'll be at comfort within yourself and not just follow the trend anywhere else.
Rashmi here. Ganesh sir, I have a question for you. Earlier in the discussion, when the discussion had started, you were saying, just now you also again gave the example that Sanjana is staying with you for 17 years in the organization, and the nations that are working, Gen Y, Gen Z. So we haven't reached to a point where Gen Z, we can say that they also stay with us for 10 years or 17 years. So what your prediction would be for Gen Z? Or how much time, and if yes, how much time will they around take to develop that kind of patience, to stay with the company?
See, we have done a lot of research. In fact, when I started this new company, we actually did a full research on Gen Z and say what is it that motivates them. See, what motivates a Gen Z is not just salary. I mean, today, of course, in this crisis that we are saying, everybody is worried about salary. I mentioned in the morning that, I mean, the IIM Ahmedabads and the Bangalores of the world also during placement time get into the same crisis of, I must have the highest salary. It doesn't last. At some point, people are looking for purpose. And even Gen Zs, by the way, don't forget, when you say Gen Z, one of the reasons why they want everything is because most of them are products of 1-child, 2-child families. They've been pampered to like crazy by parents and grandparents, etc. So when they come to an organization, they don't expect to be a roll number. I joined along with 800 other freshers and nobody takes me seriously. So which is why I think the point that Ashish was making, that Asfar was making, the early mortality of people joining is because people feel I'm just being ignored for 3 months and and they think that some other company will be better. It doesn't really happen that way. So I think a Gen Z is also a human being, like all of us, okay? A Gen Z also wants purpose in life. A Gen Z also wants tender loving care in terms of somebody taking care of the person. And the reason why, as I mentioned earlier, the associate relations function in Zensar was so successful was they knew how to take care of the Gen Zs and how to get them over that first 6 months joining hump. And our theory in Zensar, I remember, used to be that if somebody's worked for Zensar for 2 years, nobody can then shake that person. So you just have to get them to make sure that they work for 2 years. Okay, so that's the kind of thinking here. I mean, I'm not trying to generalize, but I think that's something you have to look at. So don't worry about, is a Gen Z different from a Gen Y, and a Gen Y is completely different from a Gen X. I mean, even 55-year-old people have aspirations, guys. I mean, don't think that they'll stay on in the company forever. Even they might get a job. Okay. So just look at the same yardstick and say, what do you mean to the organization? Chitiz, you want to have the last word?
No, I'm just saying one last question, please. Yeah. I'm not going to answer anything.
Sorry. This is a question from Mr. Anand Deshpande. Congratulations, 4 months back, you won the Corporate University Award. You as a founder, how have you checked on the effectiveness? Okay. Congratulations to you. So as a founder, how did you go ahead and check the effectiveness of, the learning programs or the training programs they have launched?
Any other question? Because we'll just take 3 or 4 questions and close. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I finished asking a question.
Remember your question.
My question to Anand sir. Sir, can you share us some of your experience on hiring or attracting a good team member or talent during your initial time of persistent, and any good experience or a bad experience on the retention side? That would be good for us. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do any of the little girls want to ask a question? No. Anand, audience. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Hey, give him mic, yeah.
So as Anand told that, it's like what you can do it for the company, like it's always a question from the person who's hiring it. So when the person who gets hired, if he gets the similar opportunity with the another company with a better salary, so hopping would be good or not? Then with the resource who's been hired would be, considered in the spot, or it would be then the employer who would be considered on the spot?
Anything else? Anand, audience.
Okay. So first question regarding, my reviewing. For the last 3 years, I've been chairman. I don't review anybody. I don't review anything at all. Okay. So second part, even before that, for many years, I have not been in the review mode. What I have found in general is you have to get the right people and empower them. They do the right things on their own. So I don't tell the learning guy what his job is. He knows what his job is. So at a certain point, you as an individual, I'm not saying anything in the context, but as a founder, when you start a company, you start with early on trying to do everything yourself, but you sort of get to a point where, you realize that doesn't make sense, and you have to get the right team and empower them to do the job and stop meddling with people. So that's the sort of answer to your first question that was there. And regarding the second question, I think it's a very interesting question, and I have several ideas of how I have benefited from doing this. So I'll tell you what, when you run a small business, the reality is that you're looking for hiring a small number of people. This is very important to note, okay? So if I'm a 100 people company, I want to hire 10 people. Let's say 10 freshers. That's my appetite for taking freshers, and that's how many I want to take. And you can play these numbers around. So the question is, I want to get 10 people, and I want to get the best 10 possible. So I have to do some, and this works for small businesses, do very point and shoot approach rather than do a spray and pray approach. Large companies need to spray and pray. Small companies don't need to do this. Okay. So what did I do? Okay. Actually, I was able to hire the best guys from IITs in the early days, because what I found is that these IIT guys, they need to be provoked. That is there. I was an IIT guy, and I would go for recruitment myself. I would go teach a database class in the IIT BTech class. And the MTech class, at least 2 lectures I would do every semester, not necessarily hiring them, but I would show off a little bit, saying, I know I can teach this course and I know what the heck is going on in types. So that was one thing. And then second, I sort of found a few profs, and I told them that anybody you bring to me, I will hire them 100%. But
you do whatever you need to do with them, but the profs now felt empowered that कि यार बंदे को मैं job दिला दूँ. Today what happens, the profs are getting sort of marginalized. The TNP controls, the profs don't get any bhav. And if you are a small company, the small companies, TNP will not let you in only. So how will you get through that? So the way to bypass all of these guys is to go find the profs, work with them, really, say, okay, I'll help you with your thing. And they're also looking for partnerships. So do some of those things and hire the best students that come directly from the prof, rather than going through all of this other stuff. So that was the other technique that I used quite effectively, and I got some very good people as a part of that. Third thing that I did was, actually, I did not focus too hard on retention. So I used to get people who would come for 2 years and leave. And actually, I was perfectly okay with that, because I was able to figure out, saying that, okay, if I have to get people and we're going to stay only 2 years, why get the not so great people? Get the greatest people and at least let them stay for 2 years and let them go. Later on, they'll become my customers. There'll be some place or the other. I encouraged a lot of people to do MTechs from Persistent. We had one of the best network with IIT Bombay, and a lot of our people were going there, getting MTechs and coming back. I also wrote recommendation letters for hundreds of people who went for MS and PhD to the US. And actually, they have done very well. They have been supporting us for the last 25 years. I got a lot of business from our ex-employees, so to say. And they are all in pretty nice places, actually. So, so this network really works very well. So you have to invest in attracting the best people. And you as a CEO or a founder, it's not an HR's job, okay? I did not send HR to go recruit at IIT Bombay. It wouldn't have worked. I was the CEO, I was going in myself, I was engaging with the faculty member, I was teaching database classes, and because, I was trying to provoke them. And the third thing I have found, and this is what HR guys don't agree with me all the time, if you make the test harder, right? If you really make it very difficult, you'll get better people. Okay? A lot of companies try to say, oh, I don't get people, so I must dilute my test, kuch bhi aane do. If you really kind of make it very bad for people to see, at the end of it, you're recruiting best available. That's the reality. So you're looking at whatever you get and you recruit the best available. Now, if you make the test very hard, you make it feel like it's very difficult to get in, the best people apply. Try it out. Meaning, I've had good success on that. Now, this is what I did very well in the small company situation. Now, as a large company, when I'm not involved in it, we are 18,500 people and somebody else runs HR, and I'm sure they think like other HR companies and big companies. For the small businesses, this works very well. Good, so we'll close, and I hope all of you guys, we took a lot of effort to design this conference, which I was saying in the morning. And I'm glad that most of you seem to have enjoyed it, a lot of interaction, etc., etc. So I'll just say thank you very much and hand it back to Chitiz.
Yeah, again, thank you so much, guys. First of all, I think it's interactive. That's why people have stayed till 6 p.m., so that's a big thing. They're staying for Amisha, probably. So, all right, can I have the bouquets? I'm getting schooled.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Anand Deshpande, and we are highly thankful to Dr. Ganesh Natarajan. This is a small token of love from our side. Thank you for the time and efforts you have put in. Thank you so much for such an insightful and delightful talk. We are highly, highly thankful to you.